Hello, movie patient, and welcome to Film Therapy. I'm Brienne, also known as Miss Movies, also known as your film therapist. I'm not a real therapist, but I play one on the internet just for this show. And as with every session of film therapy, I have a guest patient. And my guest patient today is Hector Navarro. Come on in, Hector.
All
Everyone
right.
knows you're here.
Hi.
But I don't know why I started that from the first episode, and now I've just decided we're 75 in or whatever, so it's
Keep
just
doing it.
keeping it going.
It feels
74, 75. I
it
don't
feels
know.
official. I like it.
It
It
is,
feels
right?
official. Yeah.
So how's it going?
Pretty good. It's going pretty good. I got a little bit of a crick in my neck.
Oh,
I slept
okay.
weird maybe. But feeling great. Thank
Should
you
we
so much
switch
for having me back.
seats?
No, 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 no,
Okay,
no, no, no.
because I
I'm
was
fine.
like, if
I'm
you're on that
fine.
side, you're like,
It's
oh.
because it's been a few days since I've worked out and it's been like a week or two since I've done yoga. So I got to go
mm,
and do some yoga
Stretch it
off
out.
of YouTube to stretch it out. And I'll do that
Oh,
later. So yeah.
okay. So off of YouTube, so
Yeah.
you just look up
For
yoga
free. Oh
videos.
yeah. My favorite is Yoga with Adrian. She
I
lives, I
don't know.
think she's in Austin, Texas.
Uh
She's
huh.
phenomenal. She's great. She's
What's her sub base? Is
oh,
she
like
like,
a bunch, I think. I
yeah?
can look it up right now, but
Yeah,
like she like
let's see
that's
it.
like her job, I think. And she does 30 days of yoga and
Mhm.
I'm in day 22 and I've been in day 22 for like 3 years or something. Like it's like I've never finished the 30 days, but she has great little like videos that are specific where it's like here's yoga that can help with lower back pain.
Okay.
Here's yoga that can help with like stretching when you're at work and you want to do, here's yoga that helps with blood flow. Here's yoga, and I like it
Oh,
because I've
that's
gotten
cool.
I've gotten used to her. If you have like a teacher, if you go do like a
Mhm.
work like a class at a gym, you start to get used to what your like teacher's sayings,
Yes.
So I've already gotten used to like how she's like, and we'll meet in downward facing dog and shavasana and we'll do a cobra. And I'm already like, yep, got it. And I'm used to her
I'm in
little
it.
like rhythms and stuff. So yeah, highly recommend it. And it's free.
I love this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna need a link to that later
Okay, you got
for sure.
it.
So if you've never joined us for film therapy, here's how it's going to work. It's actually different today because Hector, this is his second time being on the show. He was my second patient
Wow.
ever,
Wow.
and now he's back. So he today he brought to share with us, not like physically brought, but mentally he's ready to discuss it.
I would have if
Three
you asked me. I would
films.
have brought the
Oh,
physical
okay.
copies if you asked me.
Three films that are important to him in his life. And
Hmm.
that's what we're going to talk about today, those three films. And then at the end, we're going to do movie prescription. So if you're here and you're in the waiting room, which is also known as the chat,
Hmm.
I will say it's almost time for movie prescription. Put your problem in the chat and we'll prescribe you a movie to watch to help you with your problem because we're real doctors.
Yeah.
Before we get into those three
Hmm.
movies, let's get to know Hector a little bit
Sure.
better.
Okay.
So, who are you? What do you do? Sum it
Oh
up in like
boy.
two sentences. No, I'm just kidding.
That is worth checking out.
Mhm.
Elise McKenna, I recommend it. Yoga with Adrian, real easy to look for on YouTube. Just open up another tab and it's right there. But stay on this show.
Do
What
that
do I do?
after.
I have turned into a I guess, host in Los
Mhm.
Angeles. So my main job, I used to have a couple different jobs. I used to work in visual effects, and I worked in post on some movies, specifically with converting movies into 3D. So
Right.
I worked on the Avengers. I worked on Iron Man 3. My name is in the credits of Iron Man 3. I worked on a bunch
And
of other movies.
Shrek.
I did. I did Shrek and Shrek 2.
I remember
But
looking up your
and you were like,
IMDb.
"How old is Hector?"
Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay, this is what happened. So I
That's what
we
happened. Yeah.
we went on movie games together.
Mm-hmm.
It was myself and Stacy
You're like, "I'm
against
gonna check out the competition."
you and
And Adam,
Adam.
yep.
And after we did that, I was like, those guys are so cool. I want to know more about them. And I looked you guys up and I was like, how old are these guys?
Yeah.
This doesn't make sense. How I don't get it. Cause like
Shrek
it's
came
like
out in
you're
2001.
when did you start working? Are
That
you a
way I was in
prodigy?
middle
I think I
school.
asked you,
Yeah.
like, are you a prodigy? Did you start working on this when you were like in high school?
I
Like
think
what
the
how does this work?
answer to the question was that in 2011. First of all, I love 3D movies and I ended up working in that field for 4 years and worked on a ton of movies and some of the first ones I did were Shrek, Shrek 2 and Shrek the 3rd
Mhm.
because DreamWorks was coming out with Shrek Forever After, the fourth Shrek movie in the year
Sure.
2011 is when it came out.
Okay.
You laugh, but that I like that Shrek movie. I think it's
I
actually
haven't
pretty good.
seen it.
I recommend it. It's a good one. It's the one where Shrek wakes up and he was never born.
Oh,
Rumpelstiltskin,
one
like
of those.
so it's
Okay.
kind
I
of
do
like this.
like
It's a
those.
Wonderful Life, and
Oh.
Fiona, Donkey, Puss in Boots are all different.
Is Fiona like a person?
Yeah.
Oh, oh,
I
she's not
mean,
an
yeah.
ogre.
No, no, no. She's an ogre.
Oh, okay.
And she's like a warrior ogre, and it's pretty
Oh,
great. It's pretty
oh,
great. And so
oh,
he has to
badass.
convince Fiona that like they love each other and they're married
It's
and
like
have
the
kids.
vow
His kids disappear.
with
Yeah, it
Rachel
is. It is.
McAdams.
It's like the vow. So DreamWorks was coming out with this movie, and unlike other companies, namely Pixar, that like held on to their files, for all of their films, dating all the way back to like the first Toy Story. So when Pixar re-released Toy Story 1 and 2 in 2009 in anticipation for Toy Story 3 in 2010, they re-released them in 3D. And for
Okay.
Pixar, it was as simple as like bringing in a second camera in like the digital computer file space to make it so that you have
Hmm.
3D, which is you need two cameras to do it, including with
Interesting.
computer
Okay.
animated movies, right? If you ever watch a 3D movie and
You close
you
one eye.
it's like two little cameras, which creates the depth. So DreamWorks did not have the files for the first few Shrek movies, so they hired out my company, which is down in San Diego, and they were like, well, can you guys just convert these? And we said sure. So we worked on that. So I worked on Shrek 1, 2, and 3 when in the year 2010.
Okay.
So not when the movies came out, but when they re-released it. Then I had a desk job, an office job, and then I started doing hosting stuff, which is what I do now in Los Angeles. I work for a couple different companies like Nerdist, Geek and Sundry, Hyper RPG, which is owned and operated by my good buddy Zach Eubank. So
Mhm.
that's around over there. And then I'll do things occasionally for companies like Skybound, which is the company that publishes the Walking Dead comic book and like
Mhm.
produced the show and stuff, and a ton of other comics, and Nickelodeon and DC Comics is another one. I do things for DC Entertainment. So that's what I do.
Wow. Did you know back then that you wanted to be in front of the camera? Was that kind of always, on the forefront or?
No, but when I was in 6th grade, that was a big year for me.
Mhm.
My best friend at the time, Tyler Burke. Shout out to Tyler Burke. He's not watching this. He's living his life. He's having a good life. Tyler asked me to sign up for a acting class, and we were best buds and we goofed around, and then I really enjoyed it. And then the next year I like accidentally did improv. The next year in 7th grade I found out there was like an extra, like somebody was coming by after school to teach an improv class, so I did that. So I've been doing improv since high school, really, since
Okay.
like middle school, high school. And then when I moved to LA, when I had the visual effects job, my girlfriend and I at the time, my girlfriend at the time and I signed up for classes here in Los Angeles and at UCB, and
The big
we
the
were
big places.
we got into improv and we were like, it's awesome, and like met a bunch of people and like loved it. So I've always liked performing in that way,
Mhm.
and this just became like a perfect combination of like the shit I've loved since I was a
Yes.
child, which is
Mhm.
comic books and movies and stuff. And I have an expertise in, which is helpful, combined with, oh, you can be in front of a camera, you can bounce off of people. Oh, and brown and
Yes.
bonus, you're brown. So that helps all of our companies to have a
Check,
brown
check,
dude
check,
on.
check,
Check,
check.
check, 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 check. And I was like, I'll take that check. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let me come and help out. So yeah, that's how I ended up doing that.
Doing that, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's pretty amazing because hosting itself is very much just improv. Like, I learned that I once I started taking hosting classes, I
Yep.
was like, "This is improv."
Yep.
And just trying to bounce off of the person and listening, like, that's
It's
the biggest
hard.
skill
Yeah.
is, like, you have to listen, and if you're
Mm-hmm.
not listening, then you're gonna miss something,
Mm-hmm. If
which is
you're
incredible.
It's tough when you're thinking about the next thing you're going to ask. It's like you better be listening because there
Mhm.
might be these little golden opportunities to like go somewhere interesting or at least make a good bit, like a good joke, if you're interviewing somebody for a like a press junket or something.
Which
Cuz
with the
you know,
press junket, it's
yeah,
even like when I was taking hosting, like, the thing was, like, do not prepare your interview.
kind
Prepare
of.
your
Yeah.
first question,
Yeah.
kind of have a little bit of an idea of what you might want to ask second if nothing comes up, but you need to go off of what they are saying
Kind of,
and
yeah.
continue that
That's great
conversation.
advice.
And
That's
I
great
was
advice.
like, oh, that's it's really hard. It can be really hard
Mhm.
sometimes because you want to have it's more about getting that good interview and most people are ready for it that you're going to interview. There's not a
Mhm.
lot of people that will stop you and be like, we have stopped this conversation
Mhm.
now,
Mhm.
like we are done,
Not a lot of
but
people
they
that
will
go
go
like,
with it.
"That's my answer. What's your next question?" There's not
Yeah,
too many people that do
exactly.
that. Yeah.
All right, well, let's get into our three
Okay.
films, starting with the first film that you have brought, not physically,
Mhm.
to share with us.
And you have no idea what movies these are, huh?
I have no idea,
I
but you did ask me what you talked about last time,
did.
and I did, and last time I know you talked about Jurassic Park, but I don't know the other two. But you
It
had
was
brought up the
Jurassic
other
Park, it
two.
was Castaway, and it
Mhm.
was, I think, Hot Rod?
I think
like
so
which was
too.
like my
Yes.
rainy day, like I'm in a bummer mood movie
Mhm.
that I put on. So the three that I picked today, they're
We could
kind
just
of
go one at a
we'll go
time
one at a time,
so
but
we could
they're
surprise.
kind of similar to me in what I've been thinking about recently. And what I've been thinking about recently is sort of like, why do I like the things that I like? Why are the things that I like popular or not popular?
Mhm.
Why do they speak to a certain group of people? Namely, like young dudes. Like, why is the stuff that I like? Why is a lot of media that I consume? Does it feel like it's very young dude centric versus like more family friendly or for women or for whatever the case is? And I think about that a lot. I don't want to be I love being a fan and I love loving the stuff that I have since I was a kid, but I don't want to be a fanatic. I don't want to
Mhm.
be, you know what I mean? I don't, and I think about this stuff a lot. So the first one I picked, they're quoting Hot Rod. Great. Nicely done. You look shitty. Good night, Denise. The first one I picked is Galaxy Quest
Yes, I've
is the
seen
movie.
Galaxy
You've seen
Quest.
Galaxy Quest.
Hooray.
Galaxy
Hooray.
Quest is the best Star Trek movie
Ever.
made, and it's not a Star Trek movie.
Mhm.
I picked Galaxy Quest because it makes me feel good about how I like the stuff that I like because it shows
Mhm.
the good and bad of fandom, but it
Yes.
also specifically zeroes in on something like Star Trek with that kind of like world, the sort of like utopian future sci-fi thing that is in so many things. And like reminds you why that stuff is awesome, why it's
Mhm.
important, why people draw inspiration from it. I always think about that movie. It's fun because it's like actors and it's very humbling too because you watch it and you go, yeah, you know what? Don't forget all the stuff you love. It's populated with actors doing a job. You know what I
Yes.
mean? It's like sports. It's like sports have athletes and they're doing that's their job,
Mhm.
right? It's not as it's like, do you remember the movie Fever Pitch?
Yeah.
at the
Oh,
end at
do
the
I?
end of
Yes, I
that,
do.
like they went to a restaurant, Jimmy Fallon and whoever else and his
Drew
buddies.
Barrymore? Oh,
I don't think it was Drew
not that part
Barrymore,
yet.
but like they went to a restaurant and after they had like a crushing defeat, like the Red Sox had a crushing defeat, they look over and they see a player on the team and he's like laughing and having dinner. And I think even the year after that, he moved to the Yankees, which is like the worst thing you could do as a Red Sox player.
Sure.
But still, the conversation they had is like, look at him, man. Like we're over here like depressed and he's having dinner because it's just his job. Like
Mhm.
and the fan felt like jealous of the player on the team of the Red Sox because he was like, I wish I could have that attitude about the thing as opposed to my attitude, which is like maybe unhealthy,
Right.
right? So back to
Yes.
Galaxy Quest, it's like I think about the character of that Justin Long plays, who's like the young
Mhm.
fan. And it was like one of his first movies, if not his first movie.
So great.
And like at the end when Tim Allen is like, he's like, oh sir, I knew that it's all a TV show, and like I know that. And he's like, it's real, it's all real. And he's like, I knew it. And he's so validated, and he's so
Uh-huh.
into it, but he still has to like go take out the trash. His
Mhm.
mom and dad are like, you need to take out the. She's like, mom, this isn't like an omega level
Like, I
emergency.
need
And
to
it's like,
help them.
yeah, and it's like, go take out the trash, which is it's so funny, but it's so true. You get wrapped up in your stuff. You get wrapped
Mhm.
up if I'm online, if I'm arguing with somebody, or I'm talking to my
Oh,
buddies, or we're
yes.
so it's like a humbling movie that reminds me to not take any of this, not take myself too seriously, not take any of the stuff that I like too seriously, to not become so attached to it, not become a fanatic about it.
Mm.
And at the same time, at the end of that film, I get inspired. I could tear up watching these people, the fans especially, see their heroes like it's almost like it feels like a analogy for when like actors are so into the thing that they're in and they take on the responsibility and they love it. Like example is Chris Evans as Captain America,
My
right?
boyfriend, my favorite.
Everybody's
Yes.
boyfriend. Everybody's
What?
boyfriend.
Just mine.
Just Brienne's boyfriend. But this guy, like he seems like such a nice and good guy. He seems like he's a great actor. I think he's a
Mhm.
great actor, and he's like, such a treat to look at, and like it's he's
Yes.
so charismatic and everything on screen. It's great casting, but he really does like give a shit, and that's
Mhm.
nice to see when an actor like that can understand the importance. Or Gal Gadot with Wonder Woman, like
Yes.
to see her with fans,
And
just
little
here with little
girls.
girls, it's just
Oh,
like
it is the
it's the
best.
best, and it's really silly and stupid, but it is also nice to know like this does mean a lot to a lot of people, and it's cool when the actors can just kind of can be into that, right? So yeah, the movie has heart, says Edwin Van Osh about Galaxy Quest. It really has a lot of heart. So at
It
the end
does.
of Galaxy Quest, the actors, like, because they actually went on a space adventure, but kind of more like, well, maybe as important, they understand what their show means to the fans that are in the front
Mhm.
row, and they're cheering them on when they show up at the convention. Then they come out, they do a little flip and shoot the bad guy, but they have this camaraderie. They're finally like not just a cast, but like, almost like a family. Like,
Right.
and that's nice because up to that point it was just a job. Alan Rickman hated it,
They're learning
like,
how to build community, and that's
yes,
super important,
good community
especially in this
management.
day and age
Yes, yeah,
where we are interacting with the community
that's a great
as
point.
we speak.
I never even made that connection. And
Hmm.
that's a great point, that movie was maybe even like ahead of its time a little bit in
Right.
how a property or a pop culture thing interacts with its fans.
Right.
And it is kind of representative of like, here's how to do it well, is maybe not shut down the fan who walks up and asks a very specific question and go, "It's a show, okay? Get a life." Maybe not do the William Shatner skit
Right.
from SNL, but do something like, I'm with you along for the ride, but like, but do know that you be healthy about it. Like, find a balance in your life. You
Yes.
shouldn't just derive all of your happiness from this one thing. And then, you know, yeah. So that's my first one. Yeah.
I like that as your first one.
Yeah.
I saw Galaxy Quest probably when it was released in 99,
Mhm.
and I did not get it. I didn't get it.
Wow.
And then I watched it maybe 3 years ago, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is so great. I get it now," because I had finally gone to conventions and,
Yep.
like, I had been a part of fandom, if you
Mhm. For
will,
better or worse, yeah.
and I just realized this is a commentary on all of that, and I didn't know that before because I that's something I hadn't experienced before,
Absolutely. That's true.
which is interesting. I like it when you can see a movie again
And
and
it's
have a
yeah.
different perspective
Yeah.
because you've grown up and now you've been through different things as well.
Mhm. Mhm.
But man,
Yeah.
building communities super
Oh,
important, and I
look
feel
at
like
that
we're
right there.
constantly working on it.
Jim W says best part is when Alan Rickman's character says his line and it actually means something real for the first time, when he tells
Mm,
when the one fan is dying. Oh, and I didn't even make this connection, but
okay.
that's similar to me to when you see superhero actors dress up like Tom Holland. He dresses up as Spider-Man and he goes and visits kids in hospitals.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's just like, and he's like, "Hey, what's up, bud? I'm Spider-Man." And you see the kids light up. It's like, oh, I could choke up. That's so great. And it's seen in the movie where one of the alien characters is actually dying, and he was so in love with Alan Rickman's character, right?
Hmm.
Dr. Lazarus. And he as he's dying and he knows he's dying, Rickman like says the line to him, is like, "By the sons of Warvain, by Grabthar's hammer, you shall be avenged." And it means, and then the guy's like, he's so happy.
Oh.
It's beautiful. I'm tearing up right now. It's beautiful. But that, I think, it is about fandom, and it was maybe ahead of its time. And I like to
Mhm,
point to that movie when people are like, "I don't get Star Trek. What should I watch?" I go, before anything, watch Galaxy Quest, because it's a great
mhm.
entry level to the world. And again, it reminds you it's just a TV show with actors, and but here's the fandom, the good and the bad of it, and the people really do dress up at conventions. And then maybe watch some Star Trek movies and TV shows and kind of see if you like it. But I think
Right.
it's good to see that first as like a way to be like, okay, I'm not going to take this too seriously, but it is cool. It can be cool.
It
Star
is
Trek
cool.
can mean so much to a lot of
And
people, and
Star
that's
Trek has
great.
been around for what, over
Over
50
50 years.
years.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess I must have started with Galaxy Quest.
Mm-hmm.
And then I saw the Chris Pine Star Trek, and I
Yeah.
was like, "Yes, Chris Pine Star Trek." And then I was like, "This is kind of funny. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
I like
Yeah.
this. Maybe I
It's
should
super
check out
funny.
some more stuff." And I've
Yeah.
seen a few
You got
episodes
numb tongue.
of Star Trek
Yeah.
just in general, and
Yeah.
I was like, "These are great.
Yeah.
I
That's
should
it.
watch this more."
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool, yeah.
Let's get into our Galaxy Quest. We're closing that up. Let's get into
Mhm.
our second film.
Second film, is similar to Galaxy Quest in that Galaxy Quest is a great exploration of a thing that you love, that you're passionate about, maybe something that you loved as a kid.
Mhm.
So my second movie for my therapy is Pixar's Inside Out.
Aw.
And Inside Out is huge for so many reasons, and I don't even know what it could mean and what it could be for kids, or for people who have kids, for parents, like to see that movie. I remember when it came out and I saw it, I thought, I wonder if like communicating with kids can be easier if parents and kids watch this movie together. And then next time a kid can't articulate something, maybe the parent can refer to like hey, what's going on up here? Like, what emotions in charge right now? Like,
Mhm.
it's just a way to just talk about feelings, which I think is really important.
Interesting.
But the part of the movie that breaks my heart and I love is talking about why do I like the stuff that I like? Do I like it in a healthy way? I like the stuff that I like since I was 5 years old. I'm lucky that I got so into comic books and superheroes when I was a kid. And then when I was in high school, Hollywood was like, yeah, us too, and started putting these out. And then it became the
Yes.
most popular thing in the world, right?
Right?
I'll never forget the weekend I went to go see Spider Man opening weekend in 2002, the
Mhm.
Sam Raimi, Tobey Maguire Spider Man.
So good.
That was my world. I lived and breathed in that world. I knew everything about all the characters. And I came back to school in high school. I think it was in like ninth or 10th grade. Came back the next Monday, and Monday morning in my math class, two girls were talking about Peter Parker and Mary Jane. And it's not to say that girls can't be into comic books. Of course they can. Of course.
Yes.
But
But now they've entered your
I was like
world.
90% sure that these two particular girls, like regular girls in high school, like regular girls my age, weren't reading comic books before this movie came out. So they were talking about the movie and they were talking about the characters as being really interested in them. And I realized I was like, the world has changed now,
Mhm.
which is great. The stuff that I love is now going to be seen by a much wider audience and and that's awesome. That's fantastic. But I still think about, do I hold on to this stuff because I don't want to be an adult? Do I hold on to this stuff
Mhm.
I'm a 30-year-old guy now because it's like Peter Pan syndrome. Like, is it like I don't want to grow up? I don't want to do adult stuff. Do I do it to avoid responsibility? Do I do it to try to revert back to childhood and like the womb because it's comforting and comfortable? I don't know. Maybe all of the above, maybe none
Yeah.
of it, maybe varying degrees of all of that stuff. But in the movie Inside Out, the thing that just shatters me every time is when the girl character who is like the
Joy.
body,
Oh, yes.
who is yeah, not the main character, but like
I can't
the
remember her
her name is
name.
Riley,
Oh,
the young
yes.
girl who's like what 10, 11, 12, something like that.
Preteen,
Preteen.
I would say.
Riley is like upset, and she goes up to her room, and then her dad tries to come up and talk to her, and her dad tries to do goofball, and she
Mhm.
doesn't, and in her brain goofball island is crumbling and disappears.
That's right.
Come on.
That's
It's
right.
heartbreaking. And I think about how, because I said earlier, I've been doing improv since I was in high school.
Mhm.
Improv for me is play. I can go and play like I did when I was a kid. And I
Yes.
love that. And I think that's important. And I sometimes I will meet adults who I think to myself, I'm like, you don't play at all ever. And that might be a bummer. Like there needs to be some element of like, what do you do for play? What do you do to kind of, yeah, Bing Bong's another great moment. But yeah, Bing, it's the idea of like going from childhood to adulthood, and it can be really devastating and hard. And when I saw that moment, I thought to myself, I feel like I still have a goofball island because I allow
Mhm.
myself to play in certain
Facets of it.
facets of my
Mhm.
life. But then at the end of the movie, she has like a new Riley Island that's kind of everything, and there's kind of room for goofballness
Yeah.
maybe, and like it's all come together as opposed to different islands, which is what
Right.
her sort of personality and her brain was, I guess, when she was younger. So I love that because it reminds me to try to hold on to my goofball island, to
Mm.
again not take everything too seriously. And then again, it also gets me thinking, like, why do I like the stuff that I liked when I was a kid? Why does it matter? Why is it important to me? Why is it important to, like, in a way, my Bing Bong is like Spider-Man, right? He's my
Mhm.
imaginary friend that I've had since I was a kid, and I try to kind of keep him alive. Why is it
Yeah.
important to keep him alive? You watch the movie and you're like, Bing Bong is important for a lot of reasons. He might not be the most helpful in like a lot of situations you encounter as an adult, but I don't know. I plan to have kids one day, maybe that might happen for me, and I would like to try to keep remembering what it was like to be a kid, because I remember being a kid and being frustrated sometimes with my parents or other parental figures in my life, where I was just like, "God, like, don't you remember you were me at one point? It's not that like
Oh
you know,
gosh, that was I had that conversation with my parents like
yeah,
within the last I would say 6 years
wow,
because I had, my daughter was born 7 years ago and I also have a son and he's 5 and she's 7. But there was something that went down between myself and my parents,
Mhm.
and I was so frustrated, and I was like, "You don't remember what it's like at this stage and how I can't hold on right now."
Yeah.
And they were just like, "Okay, what do you
Yeah.
mean?" I was
Yeah.
like, "I need your support and you're not giving it to me, and I don't know why you're not, and I don't know why you're making the decisions that you're making,
Yeah.
and I feel like it's to hurt me rather than to help me."
Yeah.
And I
And
was just like, "Oh."
just having to lay that out flat, you
And
know?
then
Yeah.
I that's when they actually started to come back around because I was
Yeah.
able to verbalize it for them and say like, "You don't remember.
Mhm.
And I understand that you don't remember, and I'm telling you from someone that's in it right now
Mhm.
that I need your help."
And you it sounds like you did say, like, "I know that you were in my position because you were in my you were your
Yeah,
parents. You're my parents, so you were in my position, except I'm in it now, and you might not remember that position."
right.
So,
And so I hope that I don't have this same conversation
yeah.
on the other side,
That's the hope.
that and when I'm older
But
and my
we're
daughter or son is like, "You don't
yeah,
remember." I'm
but
like, "I know I don't
we're
remember."
humans, you
I
know?
was like,
We'll
"But
see.
please
I know.
help me understand. I hope I'm not
Yeah.
like, how my parents were to me, but
Yeah.
sometimes that just happens."
Yeah.
Uh,
So I like Inside Out because it makes me think about, like a lot of great parent-child relationship movies. It just makes me think
mhm,
about both sides. I'm like, okay, I'm trying to think about it from the parent's perspective. I'm trying to think about it from the kid's perspective, and yeah,
yes.
I love it. Yeah.
Plus, because of Riley and her age, and it's just like it's going through puberty and you're going through
Mhm.
those changes. And so, yeah, things are going to crumble and it's going to be really dramatic.
Yeah.
And then as you
It's
get
okay.
older and
It's
your
okay.
brain fully
Yep.
develops, then you're able to maybe have Goofball Island again.
Yeah.
Who
Or
knows?
some version of it.
I also feel that you're lucky that you get to live in this world where things that you loved as a kid
I know.
are at the forefront. Whereas, like, I was thinking, what did I love as a kid?
Mhm.
And for some reason, I was thinking of Jenny Nicholson's Ready Player One for Girls. Have you seen her
Mm.
video on
Oh,
this?
no. Oh, I
Oh
have
my
to see that.
gosh, it is so
I have to
hilarious.
see that.
It's
Okay.
she's like,
Okay.
"I didn't understand all these references
Yeah.
in this book. So then I got Ready Player One for Girls." And
Mhm.
it's like it's the book, but she like puffy painted it pink.
That's great.
And then she redoes certain passages as things that were from her childhood, like
Yeah.
talking about My Little Pony. And I was like,
Yeah.
I was really into My Little Pony. Now, My Little Pony is still around.
Mhm.
It's just not as popular as,
Mhm.
say, Spider-Man. So
It's
I'm just
true.
like,
It's true. Yeah.
so I don't
Absolutely.
know. I was like, I really don't know if there was something that I really connected to as a kid that I can see now.
That's still a part of your, like, adult life because 'cause
Right.
they're, like, making movies of it and, like,
Mhm.
I
Now
know.
Mario, Super Mario
Oh,
Brothers,
yeah.
that definitely was something that
Cool.
I was really good at. Side scroller
Mhm.
sort of
Same.
video games. And now side scroller isn't always the thing. It's kind of like you can go in this world and you can go anywhere. And
Right,
that took
right.
me a while to really adapt to
Yeah.
because I was like, but I like having it this way and having only certain options. Like
Mhm.
you only have certain
You can't
options.
even
You
go
can't go
back. You
back.
it's just go forward. Yeah.
So I'm like, that helps.
Yeah, the first
That helps me.
3D Mario game, it came out in, like, 1996, Super
Mhm.
Mario 64, you're like,
I was
where do
like,
I go? It's so
me
big.
too.
It's so much."
Exactly.
And they just keep getting bigger and bigger, and the new Mario game's great, so
It's
that's cool.
incredible.
It's
My
amazing.
kids have been playing that, and like I feel
Might be
like
the
I
best Mario
play it.
game ever, yeah.
I think it might
Yeah.
be
So that's cool.
actually. And my son like watches he when we let them watch YouTube, which we
Mhm.
don't
Good,
anymore.
it's
We
awful.
don't.
YouTube's mostly terrible.
But he would watch like all the glitch videos on
Mhm.
Mario Odyssey. Like,
Mhm.
how does this work? Let's go find that glitch,
Yeah,
And
that's
I just
fun.
thought that's so cute that
That's
he's
really
like, well,
great.
how did you know about glitches before YouTube?
Oh,
And my husband was like, well, we would get a magazine
yeah.
that would come out
Nintendo Power.
every month, and then they would tell us where the glitches are, and then we
Yep.
could find it.
Yep.
So,
It's so funny. There
but
used to be
yeah.
a Nintendo hotline you could call for tips.
Oh, really?
Yes, there
Oh my
was.
gosh, I gotta look at
When
this
the
up.
Nintendo first came out, like 1985, it was like, "Are you
Hmm.
stuck? Like, you can call this hotline," and you would have to pay probably pretty expensive back
Oh.
then, whatever it wa
Hmm.
to, like, ask somebody, like, "I'm stuck on this level," and then they would tell you what to Isn't that crazy?
Wow, that's
That was
insane.
pre-internet. I
That's
love it.
insane. I love that the movie The Wizard is basically a big ad for Super Mario 3
Yeah,
and the Power Glove.
and
Two things.
it's a very good ad for that, yeah. People love the Yep,
All right, so
Wizard.
Inside Out.
Yeah.
Let's get into our third film.
Third film is, maybe like a combination of both of them, but still kind of
Mhm.
talking about the same stuff where it's like, why do you like the stuff that you like as a kid? Why does it matter? Who cares?
Yeah.
Why haven't you moved on from the more innocent characters and stories that were very impactful to you when you were a kid? Why? Why do you
Mhm.
still need? Why isn't your favorite movie now just like Pulp Fiction and just move on? Like, you know, why isn't your favorite like, oh, I love The Crown on Netflix. That's my favorite show. Like, why do you like stuff for kids still, Hector?
Yeah.
So my last movie is my favorite movie of all time. I talk about it. I've talked about it on every corner
Can
of the
I
internet.
guess?
Go ahead.
Is it a Goofy
It's
movie?
not.
Oh, is it
Close
Good
though.
Burger?
It's not Good Burger either.
Oh,
It's
darn.
not.
Then I don't know if you've
It
talked about it
is
all the time.
it is The Iron Giant.
Oh, yes, I have heard you talk
Yes,
about
yeah,
The Iron Giant, and I
yeah.
watched The Iron Giant because of you, so
Really?
I'm thankful for that.
Wow. What'd you think?
I love The Iron Giant.
It's a great film.
I do like that there was maybe you told me about a convention where a girl
Mhm.
stood up and asked Brad Bird,
Loved it. Yep, I
like,
was there.
something why don't you tell it? Because it's
Well,
better you tell it. I don't
I
really know what it was, but I remember you telling me, and then I was like, "That's great."
that's great. I love the movie even more after all the time has passed since it came out and didn't make any money and wasn't advertised
Mhm,
well, and Warner Brothers didn't know what to do with it, and it has become since like a classic. And Warner Brothers has respected like the place that it holds in animation history and in film history. They come out with this beautiful like limited edition big Blu-ray box set, and they've like when it was released on Blu-ray for the first time, they had all these great special features, and then in the past few years, with its I think 15th anniversary because it came out in 99 as well. Great year for
mhm.
film. Great year.
99 is incredible.
Great year. Um, they made a documentary
Hmm,
called The Giant's Dream, where which is named after like a deleted scene in the film, but The Giant's Dream was just chronicling the making of, and it is phenomenal. If you have a chance to see this documentary, and I learned things about the movie, and I'll talk about that in a second. But they screened the documentary for the first time at I think like WonderCon or something a few years ago, and then Brad Bird, the director writer, was there with a couple other like writer producers of the film on this panel. So I saw the documentary and I was sitting next to I think Adam Lavick and maybe my buddy Augie Augustine Rios was there too. I was crying watching this documentary. It's beautiful. The thing wraps up. There's great questions and answers happening. Last question of the panel was this young girl that stood up and asked a question to Brad Bird. She goes, "How do you feel? Um, how do you feel knowing that you made the best Superman movie ever?" And the audience just like they're like, "Oh my god!" Like they
they're
lost
like,
it,
"That's it,
applauded. They're
everyone.
like, "That's great."
Bye."
And Brad Bird, very like very sort of what's the word I'm thinking of?
Humbly?
Humbly and very diplomatically was like, "Well, I know that the best answer to that question is like to not even answer it, but thank you so much." And like he kind of didn't address it. He wasn't like, "Yeah, I know," but he wasn't like, "No, I didn't." He was just kind of like, "Thank you so much." Um, so I picked the film because it kind of has two meanings for me. The first one is that, as you know, superheroes are very important to me, and they are at the surface level like cool, fun, cool. Oh,
Yeah,
powers are cool.
powers
What
are
if
cool.
what if you watch a movie and the guy climbs on walls? That's cool. What if somebody flies in X-ray vision? Oh, that shit's cool. What Batman? Oh, Batman beats guys up. That's cool. Cool car. Cool, cool, cool. But if you go deeper with some of these characters and what they mean and what they stand for, Spider-Man stands for responsibility. And I've carried that lesson with me like my whole life. And it actually, like, I care about it. It means something to me. I think it's important. Superman also talks about responsibility. Superman is a character who inspires people, and he also, unlike Batman or unlike Tony Stark, Iron Man, like doesn't care about being rich. Superman
Hmm,
could be the wealthiest. Superman could own the
oh,
world.
yeah.
Superman with his powers could cheat, use his powers to cheat and just make himself money. He could like cheat at the stock market somehow. He could
Yeah.
be Clark Kent who's a millionaire, but because he kind of comes from humble beginnings and because of how he was brought up by his ma and pa, his mother and father in Kansas, he at the bare minimum, he has a job that allows him enough money to like pay rent in Metropolis to have an apartment.
Which makes me think just right now, wouldn't it be interesting to see like a sliding doors scenario where he's not with Ma and Pa Kent and he ends up with, I don't know,
It's
the
happened a
Lex
lot.
Luthor like
It's happened a lot.
estate?
There's
So
been
they have done, I'm
stories.
sure they've done it,
Oh,
but
I
like,
think they've even done that one specifically. I think
okay,
they've even done like, what if
sweet.
Superman were raised by the Luthers? I think they've even done that. They've definitely done one where
I
Superman
gotta look it
lands.
up.
This is a crazy one where Superman lands, his rocket lands in Gotham, specifically Martha and Thomas Wayne
Hmm.
find baby Kal-El and raise him. And because they find the baby, they
They
never
don't
they
have
never
their
have
own
Bruce
child.
Wayne. And
Hmm.
and they're
Okay.
still like shot but Superman, or maybe one of them dies, or maybe neither of them because he's bulletproof, like when he's a little kid. But whatever happens, Superman still ends up becoming like a Dark Knight vigilante in Gotham, but he just kind of has powers now. there's versions where he lands. What if instead of Kansas, what if he lands in Soviet Russia and becomes the Superman, and like the government in Russia gets a hold of him. And then on the flip side, in the United States, Lex Luthor becomes this sort of like scientific hero who needs to, and then like Russia wins World War II or what, like,
Right.
you know, or whatever the time period is. There's so
Oh,
many
so many
else worlds.
interesting. I
Hmm.
like that.
So it really comes down to, why is Superman the way he is? He wasn't born that way. He wasn't born being good. Remember, like his mother and father on Krypton, Jor-El and Lara, like they sent him to Earth knowing that he would have powers so that at least he would be safe and alive.
Mhm.
They weren't counting on like he'll live among them and be a good dude.
Yeah,
They were just like,
sure.
if he rules it, hmm, at least our sun will be alive and we're about to explode on Krypton and there'll at
It's a
least be a
great
Kryptonian.
sociological experiment.
Yeah, to where you know, where does Superman land? So Superman, his greatest power is was always his sense of right and wrong and like doing the good thing for the sake of doing the good thing,
Mhm.
which I think is powerful. And I have been rejecting cynicism in the past couple years of my life, and I think that a great comic book writer, a guy named Grant Morrison, who's written Superman stories and a lot of other things, said that when he was growing up during the Cold War, that he realized that the idea of Superman is more powerful than the idea of the bomb, and always being afraid of
Mhm.
the bomb. And I think that that's a beautiful sentiment. We should be trying to push those kinds of ideas and inspiration and hope and fairness and equality and justice and all these things versus being afraid of what the world has in store for us, you know?
Right.
So going back to the Iron Giant, number one meaning it has for me is like, that movie perfectly distills what being a hero is, you know? He's in the junkyard. Well, first of all, and it's all through the eyes of a kid, right?
Mhm.
Imagine if
Yes.
the Iron Giant landed somewhere else and it wasn't Hogarth, this kid who found him,
Yeah.
this 12-year-old kid, but he landed and the government finds the giant. Then we're dead because the
Yeah.
government would
That's
poke
it.
and prod him and he would revert to his programming and destroy us all. But through the innocence of a child, a 12-year-old kid, he's showing him comic books. He shows him Superman. That's Superman. He's a hero. You know, it comes from an exploded planet, blah, blah, blah. But he's a hero. He fights for truth and justice. And then the giant sees the other comic book, which is like this evil robot. It's like a, you
Mhm.
know, Strange Tales or something, and it's Atomo. And he's like, this? And he goes, oh, that's Atomo. But you don't want to be like him. He's a bad guy. You want to be like Superman. And it's so simple.
Yeah.
It's so simple. Then he throws the Superman comic on the front. And then the giant kind of looks at the other one, but then like almost reverts to it. And then Hogarth kind of snaps him out of it. And he's like, I want to be Superman. So then they're playing in the junkyard. And, you know, Hogarth is just playing and he's throwing the little ray at him. He's like, Atomo, I'm going to get you. And he goes, no, Atomo. Me no am Atomo. And he says, come on. He goes, no. And he looks over and he sees a supermarket sign, grabs the S, puts it on his chest, turns around. He says, me am Superman. The giant wants to be Superman. Why can't he be Superman? You know?
Yeah.
And at the end, and it comes down to, and it's a perfect, oh, I might start tearing up. It's a perfect combination of the two ideas. The first one being, you are who you choose to be. Now choose. That's what Hogarth says. And then at the end, when the giant sacrifices himself, the last thing he says is Superman, and then he dies. Right? That's
Mhm.
great. But then the other thing that I love, and I didn't know this until I saw the documentary, is that Brad Bird made this film a little bit after he lost his sister to gun violence. His sister
Mm.
was killed by her husband, and
Oh, that's
it
sad.
was devastating for Brad Bird. They were very very close, and I didn't. This documentary talks about what happened and how it happened, and then Brad Bird as an artist just felt like, you know, what am I doing? Like, just felt very disconnected from the world of art. He worked on The Simpsons. He went to Cal Arts. This guy was like on the way up, you know? So then he gets an opportunity to have this meeting at Warner Brothers, and they have a bunch of different properties. And he's interested in this when he goes and reads his children's book, this like poem thing about the Iron Giant. He comes back, and his pitch is he turns it into, what if a gun had a soul? Would it want to be a gun?
Mm.
And Brad Bird's answer to that question is a resounding no, of course not. And it's like, you know, I'm a kid and I didn't make that connection that the movie has such a strong anti gun violence message.
Wow.
And it's coming from a real place, which is Brad going through what he went through and losing his sister. So then he creates this art that the answer is no, don't be ridiculous. Of course, if a gun had a soul, it would not want to be a gun, a weapon used for killing people. That's horrendous. If a gun had a soul, it would want to be Superman instead.
I like
So
wow.
yeah,
I gotta
so
see this documentary.
it's
When does
it is
or where
beautiful.
can you
It's on the
find that?
special features of I think the most recent version of the Iron Giant Blu-ray,
Okay.
and Yeah, that's a good point. No, soldiers do not want to kill, asks Laura H. Horsefall, but Laura is, I'm sure, probably talking about the necessity of our world that we live in, and I
Right.
agree. But the point is that this story is a story that is asking these kinds of questions so that we can ask them of ourselves, so that we can at least strive for something. And to me,
Mhm.
that ties into superheroes. To me, that ties into like, go back to Star Trek. What are we doing if we're not trying to eventually get to the world of Star Trek? Right? There's
Yeah.
two sci-fi futures that both were active in the year 1968. One of them is Star Trek and one of them is Planet of the Apes. Which one are we going
Oh.
for? Which one are
Oh.
we trying to do? Which one are we trying to be?
Oh, I hope it's Star Trek.
Hundreds of years from now, thousands of years from now. Me too. So the
Mhm.
idea, just like Avengers Age of Ultron, Iron Man and Captain America are having a discussion as Chris Evans is breaking wood like a real
Mhm.
beefcake. And Tony asks him, isn't the point to end the fight? Why must there always be a fight?
Yeah.
Why must there always be soldiers? Isn't the point? And Tony's trying to find a solution to like everything, which leads him to create, or which led him to create Ultron, and it's real bad. And that's what a lot of Tony Stark's story is. But I Steve Rogers might live in a more realistic world, but Tony Stark was at least asking the question of like, well, what's the point? What are we moving towards if we're not eventually trying to move to that at some point?
Mhm.
So I think that yeah, I think that that's an interesting point, Dan. And yeah, I think that's true. An inanimate object that has never spoken before, but an inanimate object that has so much power, especially in this country, with how people feel about guns and what is even happening right now with young people going like, we're tired of it. That's enough. That's enough. We can be sensible and reasonable, and we can be people who have freedoms, but still know like what's really for hunting and protection and what's not, and what's just for like, this makes me feel good, I like to do this,
Mm.
this is cool, and I like having access to this. Anyway, it's like, however you feel, you cannot deny the powerful message behind Brad Bird's intention, which is asking that question and then answering it in a
Yeah.
beautiful way that I think is great for kids to kind of process. That movie, I would show that movie to a kid to like explain death, and it's
Huh.
which is hard. I don't know how.
Oh, we watched Coco the other
Yeah,
day.
I'm
Talking about
sorry.
explaining
Yeah,
death. I mean, I
I
saw
know.
Coco with my daughter in the theater.
Yeah,
We both cried. And then
yeah.
my son just watched it for the first time. He has been reading the little book. There's like
Cocoa
a
book. Yeah.
yeah, it's so he knew what the story was kind of gonna like
Mm-hmm.
basic outlines of the story because it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
go into real detail. But it was the first, kids have this moment where it's like their first experience of emotion
Yeah.
and then they like either cry or like just get really sad and you can tell. And I was like, oh, this is his first moment of
Oh,
I understand
I
this and
understand.
I'm putting this together.
I'm putting it together.
And I
But
was like,
what a
oh.
great and like beautiful way to do it, because that movie
Mhm.
says, that you read the stories of like kids that, whether they're like Mexican, Latino or not, see the movie and then immediately go, we got to get pictures of our grandparents. We got to get pictures of our aunts and uncles. We got to put them
Mhm.
in the house somewhere.
Yeah,
That's beautiful.
it
That's not
is.
hurtful at all. That's like helpful. That's like a great way to cope and to think about stuff. And if you've never seen Iron Giant, Edwin, highly recommend it. It's a perfect
It's
film.
beautiful.
It's flawless. There's no flaws in that movie. But the Iron Giant's another one. There's a scene in the middle of it where like a deer gets shot, and it's right after the giant almost touches the deer. It has this beautiful moment with nature. This giant hulking thing is so quiet enough that like a deer comes up and almost touches his nose to his finger, and
Mhm.
then the deer hears something, goes off, and then gets shot by a hunter. And then the giant comes across the body. The hunters scatter away. They're scared. It's the giant. Run away. And he goes to touch it, and Hogarth's like, "Don't do that. Don't touch the body." And he doesn't understand. He's like a
Mhm.
child. And so later they're talking about death, and the giant asks, like, "What is it?" And he's like, "Well, it means like you die. You go
Mhm.
away." And he goes, "Like, you die?" And he says, "Well, yeah, someday." And Hogarth says that, and he goes, "I die?" And he goes, "Well, you're made of metal, but you have a soul." And then he says
Yeah.
it's so beautiful. He goes, and souls don't die, souls live forever. So maybe kind of it's just
Right.
beautiful. I just think it's real helpful
Mhm.
stuff. And the other thing, to wrap up everything with my three movies, is I've landed on the side of, I think that it is more difficult, speaking of Coco, to tell complex and interesting stories that people of many ages can experience. I think that is more difficult to do than to
Yes.
tell a story
Absolutely.
specifically for adults,
Mhm.
you know? So those are those is that just me justifying the things that I love from when I was a kid because I'm trying to hold on to it? Or is it me going, no, I think it is more mature to like to think Superman is cool. I think that's mature. I think that
Mhm.
it's hopeful and beautiful. It's like, sue me. Like, sorry. So,
Gosh, I
yeah.
was having that discussion with my kids
Yeah.
recently as to what happens like when you die and what
Mhm.
that all means and what happens to your body. And I'm like, we are getting really technical here. Like this is really
and
technical.
and for the record, my personal belief, I don't believe in an afterlife. I don't think that there is one. And that's okay. And I think that but the point is about the Iron Giant, which kind of states that there is one as far as that movie and
Mhm.
it's the characters in it are concerned. I think that's still beautiful. I still think that that's fine and great and cool for kids to hear and absorb and talk about and learn. Like
Absolutely.
I think that I don't want kids movies that are like, that's it, kids. There's nothing. It's just like I don't want that.
That's it.
I want kids movies to be honest, but I also want them to help
Thought
humans.
provoking.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes, to be honest and not talk down to kids, but still be like, but give kids hope and heart and love and laughter and
Absolutely.
yeah.
Before you run down your three movies for us as
Mm-hmm.
just a review,
Mm-hmm.
I want to let people know we're going to do movie prescription. So if you have a problem, put it in the chat and we'll prescribe you a film.
I almost for real cried multiple times just
Oh, it's okay. If you
now.
did,
I
you should
know.
have
I know.
mixed good ratings. I'm
Yeah.
joking. But okay, what? Go ahead and
The
remind
three
us of your
movies I
three
talked about. The
movies.
first one I think was Galaxy Quest,
Yes.
talking about fandom, talking about why I love a thing like Star Trek, why it's important, but also to not take myself too seriously or to take the stuff I love too seriously. Number two was Inside Out, talking
Mhm.
about emotion, talking about not losing your goofball island,
Yes.
which has kind of been a big thing in my life personally. And yeah, and why I feel like holding on to goofball island and childhood stuff is cool and important sometimes. Number three, the Iron Giant, on top of the wonderful message, and I think it's very poignant and very and it's and I agree with it wholeheartedly. If a gun had a soul, would it want to be a gun? And the answer is no. I agree with that. I also think that it is a beautiful movie that perfectly sums up like why Superman is important and superheroes and why it's important to model yourself after heroic things versus like cynical bad guy stuff
Mhm.
things. Thank you so much for
Absolutely.
the comment, Elise. It's very nice. Elisa. It's probably Elise McKenna.
Elise.
Thank you, Elise.
She
Great.
says that you have thoughtful insights or
I
insightful
I love
observations.
coming up with insightful observations, especially
Mhm.
about the stuff that I've loved since I was a kid. Again, seeing things in a new light, Galaxy Quest, and you go, oh, I know what
Absolutely.
this is about now. So I like doing that. It's fun.
So Randall Sands put a
Yeah.
problem in the chat
Okay.
about he's going to be starting a new job and he's nervous about it and he's been out of
Mm.
work since September.
Ooh.
So
Oh man.
I was thinking that movie with Anne Hathaway
The Devil Wears Prada.
and Robert. Well, I could do that one and Robert De Niro, the intern.
Oh,
I
that
don't
might be
know. I
good. Have
didn't
you
see
seen it?
it,
Oh, okay.
but I
That
was
might
like,
be good. That
is
might be
that
good for
funny?
that.
I mean, The Devil Wears Prada, you could definitely watch
Yeah.
because that
Gives you
is
perspective.
it does give you perspective of how
Mhm.
horrible things could be,
Mhm.
but also how you don't lose yourself in
Mhm.
those
Mhm.
situations.
And yeah, that's a good one. I don't know if it's a job centric thing. Yeah, no, I can't get this movie out of my head. I'm not going to recommend it. That's not really related. It's more of like a college. If anybody has any college trouble, I got a movie on deck that I could recommend right away. But man, what's another good like jobs movie?
I mean, I
Dang.
usually do Office Space. That's my go-to, but like at the
Oh,
same time, it's like
big time. No,
I've said
that's
it so many
I'll
times.
piggyback off of that. Office Space is great because it's another good somebody said earlier in the chat from Step Brothers, don't lose your dinosaur, right?
Oh,
That's what Richard Jenkins' character says to his son Brennan or Dale, I forget which. Don't lose your dinosaur. Office Space is like find a good work-life balance.
hmm
Know what you should put up with and know what you shouldn't put up with. Be the type of person who isn't afraid to. It's like do a good job and back your stuff up. Excuse me. But if you have a situation where you're like, I have 5 bosses. Do you know what that means? That means if I mess up my TPS reports, I have 5 different people. Like,
that are gonna
don't
come to
don't
me.
be afraid to like bring that stuff up in an office. I don't think office settings are these holy places where you can't, it's just people. Like, go talk
Mhm.
to your boss. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, try to make it a better place while you're working there. Try to make it better from the inside, and like be cool to people and be respectful, but don't feel like it's, if it doesn't work out or if you don't like it. What's the number one reason people quit jobs? The people they work with, not the job itself. It's the people they work with.
Yeah, it's
So
communication probably as well.
yeah, if you go to a work setting and you're like, I got to get out of here, it's most likely because the people are like bad or terrible or like
Mhm.
disrespectful or whatever. So I feel like that kind of stuff, you can change some of that to an extent. So don't feel helpless
Yes.
if you're like, I'm in a new job and I can't do anything. It's like, no, go do your thing, do your job. Um, but it's just people. Your bosses are just people.
May Ank says, going through a tough time in my life. I was in the hospital
Wow.
with a blood clot in my brain for 13 days. Please suggest a good comedy to
Oh
cheer me
man,
up. I'm
Mayank.
sorry to hear that. That
Yeah.
is
I
crazy.
hope you're feeling better.
Yes.
Yeah.
A
What's a
good
good
comedy.
Hmm.
Let me think. I
Hmm.
was like, what's my favorite comedy? First of all, what are my favorite movies?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's
I
what
got
I love Clue. That's always something that I come to. I made you watch it.
Yeah. Clue's great. Watch
And
Oscar.
Oscar. Oscar with Sylvester
Starring Sylvester
Stallone
Stallone in a
will
musical.
make you laugh.
So weird. Well, my advice would just be to put on whatever you love the most. But if you're looking for new stuff that you haven't, I always go back to stuff like Austin Powers.
Mhm.
I love Austin
Austin
Powers.
Powers is
I
pretty
used to
great.
go back to the first Ace Ventura, but it doesn't quite age great. There's like things that
Mm.
are very
Very
90s, and it's
90s, yes.
it's very the movie is very transphobic when you watch it. You're like, "Oh yeah, I
Oh.
forgot about that." But, to be reminded of, oh, how far we've come in the world today. I love Jim Carrey movies. I love The Mask. I also love Mean Girls. It's just a
Yes.
great,
Mean Girls
right?
is incredible.
It's
I
so
think I
funny.
could quote that from
It's
beginning
so
to end.
quotable. It's so funny, and yeah, that's just a great one. I love to put that one on. But like I go back to Austin Powers because it's not super relatable,
Mhm.
and it's not going to hit me with certain themes of like, oh wow, I'm thinking about my life. I'm like, no, it's not the most There's things in there that are definitely relatable, and things about Mike Myers and how
Yeah.
he made that movie like to honor his dad and stuff. But Austin Powers, International
Fish
Man of
out of
Mystery,
water scenarios are
they're
always
fun.
always great.
If like Thor, just like watch
Yeah.
the first Thor movie. I don't know, it's fine.
The
If you'll,
first one, the third one. Skip the second one
yeah,
cuz I don't know what happened there.
I know.
I
But the
don't.
second one, I made my girlfriend watch the second one before we went to go see the third one.
Mhm.
And the only payoff is that at the beginning of the third one, then when they recap the second one by doing a fake play with Matt Damon,
Yes, that
like
is good.
it's
You're right. That
hilarious.
is
And to see
good.
the second one, to kind of see where we've come from, like that, like overly serious and not great movie, to then see the third one and have that scene happen, you're like, this is great. And I'm kind of glad I watched Thor: The Dark World. So yeah.
Mm. Ah, thank you so much, Hector,
That's it.
for
Okay, great.
joining us
Thank you
today.
so much.
I had a
So much
great
fun.
time. I enjoyed hearing about your
I
movies.
really appreciate it. This is so great. You got great pants on right now. You have
Thanks.
you have shining
They're
pants.
The Shining.
Yeah.
Here, let's see if we can see that.
They got it. They got the
They're The
pattern.
Shining by
It's
Pop
the Oh,
Active. What do
cool.
you
Pop Active
know?
right there. Yeah. Yeah.
But where can everyone find you and all your
Ooh. Ooh,
insights?
you know what? And speaking of, I'm glad that I got to come and be on the show because I'm going to invite you to come and do my podcast.
Yes.
So you can find me on the internet at Hector is Funny at all the stuff that I do. And also if you like movie discussions and trying to find insightful observations. I
Yes.
just started a podcast with my good buddy Keller Knobloch, and
Oh
it is
yeah,
called
he's
He's
hilarious.
Hilarious. It's called the 500 Greatest Films Podcast. We're going to take 10 years to watch 500 movies, a list of the
Wow.
500 greatest movies. It's a movie a week, and I'm going to show you a list right now, and then you can pick one, and hopefully you'll be on it in a couple of months. We've done
That would be
episodes
great.
with Emma Fife.
Mhm.
We've done episodes with Augustine Rios. We've had our buddies on. We're going to have Clark Wolf on
Yes.
in a few months to talk about the first Scream movie. So
Oh, love
she's
the
great.
first Scream
Cannot wait to
movie.
talk to her about that. Where we just watched the movie and then we chat about it.
Mhm.
We just watched the movie Brick with my buddy and
Oh,
boss
yeah.
from Geeky
I
Sundry Sax Car, Brick,
I
Ryan
read
Johnson.
I read the screenplay for that before
Oh,
it, was made.
really?
Yes,
Very
because
cool.
I was working for a production company that was looking to do their first feature film, and they're
Wow.
like, "Can you read some scripts for us?" And I was like, "Okay." And I read Brick, and I was like, "This is very strange to me."
Hmm.
Like, I was like,
It is very
"But
strange.
I kind of like it." And
Mhm.
I didn't know how it was gonna translate
What'd you think of the
from
movie? Did you see it?
page to
Yeah.
screen. I didn't like it as much as I thought I was going
Yeah.
to, and I feel like maybe because was picturing the characters to be a little bit older, even though I knew they were in
We're in
high
high school?
school, and
Sure.
so I was like,
Mhm.
I don't know."
Well,
Ah.
I didn't
Like
I did not like the movie when it came out. I couldn't
Mhm.
connect to it. But for some reason I also forgave the movie Juno, which also has high school
Okay.
age characters talking in a way that's not really
Right.
common. So like that's interesting. But did I like it rewatching it after having seen Star Wars The Last Jedi by Ryan Johnson?
Yeah.
And that is now my favorite Star Wars movie. You're gonna have to check out the episode to find out. It comes out on Monday,
Okay,
the Brick
cool.
episode with our buddy Sax Carr from Geek and Sundry. But we'll have you on. It's so
I'd
fun.
love to be on.
And yeah, so check that out. That's you can find it on Twitter at 500 GF podcast,
Mhm.
or you can just search for it on iTunes and Podbean and different things. 500 greatest films.
Do you do it in order of, like, starting at 500 and
Yeah,
going to
that's
1?
what we're doing.
Okay,
We're not
okay.
skipping around. We're
Got
not
it.
because the number one movie according to this list is The Godfather.
Oh,
So I've already
okay.
had people express interest. They're like, "Oh, I haven't seen The God. I'll watch that." I'm like, "That's
Yeah,
10 years from
that's
now."
gonna take a
I'm
while.
like, I don't want to skip around and be like, "Here's the number one movie. Here's the." I want to just
Yeah.
go in order
Okay,
because
perfect.
ideally, the idea would be that the movies are going to get better.
Mhm.
So
I love
yeah,
it.
it's cool.
Great.
It's great.
At Hector is funny
Yep.
on Twitter. You can find me all day, every day on Twitter at Miss Movies. That's it. And tonight I'll be at the live Schmodown at the
Yeah.
El Portal Theater. So if you're coming out, say hello. And that's all I got going on, I think. I don't know what else I got going on. Anyways, we will see you next time. Thank you for joining us. Bye. 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 Bye.